Call to order the Monday, October 28th regular meeting of the school board. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Reminder, the flag is in the southeast corner of the room. Just one other note that board member Amber Flynn is joining us by phone this evening. Next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Mr. Manley and a second by Dr. Lunn. We'll take a roll call vote.
Lunn?
Yes.
Flynn?
Aye.
Palmasino?
Aye.
Larson? Absent. Clevin?
Yes.
Kodak?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
H yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. I do not have any public comment cards. If there are members of the public who wish to speak at this time, please come forward to the microphone. We'll move on to agenda item 4. These are superintendent's recommendations for discussion. 4A is an update on the restructuring of athletic directors and district activities directors position. And this will be Mike Biermeyer.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me. So let me get going on here. So what I'm here to talk about is kind of give you an update on the activities director model since we are finished our second year, going into our third year. We have, a lot of it's my opinion, but I have some quotes because we did survey some of our coaches and stuff. But personally, can I tell you from where we started, the anxiety that I had, I mean, I was so excited to come and take the job, and then we got into it, and I'm like, wow, we're making some major changes here. 2 years into it, I feel pretty proud of where we're at right now. We still have a lot of things to change that we want to do, but I'm going to go through some of what we're doing well and where we need to continue to work. So kind of as a reminder, this was brought a couple years ago as the fruition it came through as this was designed to provide students, coaches, advisors, and families involved with activities more of a direct administrative support, visibility, mentorship, and guidance at the campus level and overall enhancement community-wide. So kind of keep that big, long statement in as we go through, because we're going to be dealing with a little bit of elementary, middle school, all the way up onto high school. So first of all, where did we come from? So we had this model, so it gets a little tricky on some nomenclature here as we get into it. But a couple years ago, what we've had for a long time is we had a district level athletic director. And of course, there was a secretary out here too for that. So that person was handling all of the athletics for both campuses. Big load, stuff to do. At the high school level, that person also had 2 building level activity directors. One for Red River, one for Central. They did a lot of involvement with direct student participation, a lot of game management, setting up the gyms for the games, hiring all the workers, really kind of those day-to-day things like that. But one of the problems with that model is those activity directors didn't have a whole lot of, we'll say, supervision of the coaches, mentorship, administrative power. So it was kind of part of the gist or the fruition of the change of the model. So we'll get into that a little bit here again. At the middle school level, we had a part-time middle school AD. It was a certain part of a teacher's contract for the day, and depending on what part of the year determined the percentage of the day that the person was devoted to that, plus a stipend. So that was kind of the person who was running most of the middle school stuff. Had 3 associate principals, South, Schrader, and Valley, that were boots on the ground type of person for the middle school, handling the coaches, hiring the coaches, things like that. And 4 building level activity coordinators. Those people did a lot of the purchasing of equipment, a bit of a liaison between the coaches and the APs. So one thing, as we get through this, I'm gathering all that information because I wasn't here. So listening to the coaches, listening to my 2 ADs, Tony and Tyler, and the administrative people, this is what we had. So let me just start by saying, if something up there doesn't really sound exactly what you thought it was, it's probably my fault. But again, I wasn't here, but this is the way I understand it was. So now let's get into what we are doing. So at the district level, we switched a term. We have an activities director, and that's me. So activities, that's encompassing all of our North Dakota High School Activities Association activities. So not just the sports, but speech, debate, student congress, the fine art portions that compete. Those things, those transportation issues, those budget issues, things like that, that is now running through the activities director. So that's kind of a little bit of what I do there. And of course, I have a secretary there, so that really hasn't changed. But at the high school level, here's kind of a major change. So now we have full administrative athletic directors. At Central, we have Tony Bina, and at Red River, we have Tyler Nelson. The big change here is they've really taken a lot of the lift off of the administrators with the hiring of the coaches, the again, like I said, the evaluation of coaches, the mentorship of coaches, the being able to have access not only for coaches, but for the student body in those buildings. That I believe, as I'm hearing and I'm living it, I think is a major change and a major plus with this new model here. Over at the middle school level, we no longer have that part-time middle school athletic director that we talked about. So I'm gonna flip back. So we had a part-time middle school AD. So I wasn't sure if they called him athletic director or activities director, but we're gonna call, we had a previous part-time middle school AD that was part of the teacher contract within their day. We don't have that anymore. So that has been replaced with, I have a middle school athletic manager, we'll call it. So it has nothing to do with their teacher contract. Everything is an extended contract. But that person takes care of, you know, I hate to put a number on it, but you know, you're looking at 15 to 20% of what the previous person did, and then I'm picking up the rest of it. So it's dispersed a little bit differently, and it's hard to grasp in the head sometimes, so I'm doing my best with this. We still have associate principals at South and Schrader. Valley model has changed because their status has changed. The associate principal's job has changed a little bit, more demands on them with the type of school that they have there, which I completely believe in. So South and Schrader saw those associate principals, so we're trying to pick up the slack there with Valley. The same building level activity coordinators, and they're still basically doing their same job of equipment, some supervision, liaison between the coaches. So that's about describing kind of what we are. So now we're going to kind of go to, what do we think we're doing well? So at the high school level, as I mentioned, we have more direct supervision, mentoring, the structure. You can read all that right there. Some of the most important things that I want to share with you is when we reached out to those people who were involved with the old model and with the new model, so they can give us a good picture that they've lived both of these. Here are some of the things and some of the numbers that they've given back to us. Communication, 83% better. So 83% gave us a 4 out of 5 or higher. 5 was the highest. 1, go back and redo it, we need something else. So 83% said communication is better. Visibility at practices and games, 75% said it's a 4 or a 5. I'm gonna pause right there. When we talk about visibility at the practices and games, Tony and Tyler are put in a lot of time at those practices because that's where you really get to see the coaches and how they interact. So I'm extremely proud of what they're doing right now, having that direct contact on the court, on the field, on the ice. They're out there a lot. Accessibility to open door policy, again, 75% gave us a rating of 4 or higher. And I'd like to point out also that this includes Tony and Tyler at the high school level going to our booster clubs. They meet often, they're there, they're able to give them direct information on where we're at, what some of our needs are. They in return send that back to our coaches, and they're getting our parents involved. As you know, our boosters, one of the main and only ways that they have money is by getting volunteers to work at concessions, which is parents. Operations management of games and schedules, 83%, 4 or 5 or higher. Program support, 83% or higher. Half of our coaches that we surveyed said that this was dramatically improved, our program support. I think we hit it the nail on the head with what the intent was with that one right there. Evaluations are 91% better. So here are some of the quotes. Having someone in the building has helped for accessibility. Having an athletic director in the building has provided more visibility and helped to build relationships with staff and kids. The enhanced accessibility of our ADs on the new platform has been the most significant factor to date. It has strengthened our communication and deepened our professional relationship. And one more on this subject, and it gets a little long, so bear with me. What I do appreciate is that each high school now has its own AD, which makes in-person communication substantially easier as coaches and administrators are both in the same building. I think that this allows administrators to better know their own athletes as well. The transition was obviously challenging as new positions were created and evolving responsibilities, and there were a number of information gaps that had to be filled in. I thought Mr. Bina, Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Biermeyer were all very upfront and direct with coaches as to where things were in the transition process. I do feel that it is now more clear whom we as coaches need to go to for certain questions or items. That was one of the big red flags that Tony, Tyler, and I identified right away. Who's doing what, and how do we get that information out to the coaches? In the end, the process that we had, I think, has worked pretty well, and we're landing where we all three have, our successes and our strengths. A couple things at the high school level that we've been able to enhance or create, if you will, is one thing is with border battle cross country. So thanks to our coaches and specifically Sean Allen to have the vision of having this mega meet here in Grand Forks, we just finished our 3rd year. We have over 2,000 runners that come in, approximately over 4,000 spectators. And from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, here are some numbers. After year 1, we had a $450,000 economic impact to Grand Forks with that one-day event. After year 2, $714,000 impact. And I don't have year 3 because we just finished. But it was bigger than year 2, so I'm expecting that number to go a little higher. So again, giving our coaches that ability, that vision to say, not finding a way to say no, but finding a way to say yes. And that's just one example right there. I think our transportation is improving. It's still a hurdle that we're going to come up with. But what I can tell you is through some of the efforts, obviously Valley Bus Company, it's the heavy load on them to do, but we haven't ignored that. We've had lots of meetings with them. Brandon Baumack has been leading those things. We are actively searching for bus drivers. And 1 year ago, we had 0 bus drivers that could take our student athletes on the road during the weekday or when we had school before 4:30. That's a big deal. That means any team that left at 3 o'clock, we got to go outside of Valley Bus Company and find someone else to take us. Now, as we go into winter, this is a lot to me. Doesn't sound like much, but every day they are giving us 2 bus drivers that can leave during the day. That's a huge difference, and it's only going to get better. I think when we look at some of the good things that we've done up there, equity between schools, what I mean by that is now we have more resources, manpower, to really take a look at some of those schools from a budget standpoint. Building a budget is one thing that we did that, I'm extremely proud of. Took a long time. Lexi, my assistant, we went back and looked at 10 years worth of how the activities department was spending their money. A lot of hours with Brandon, a lot of hours with Zach trying to figure this out, and we've landed on a pretty good budget right now that we will evaluate every year. That's one piece of equity that we can have, I think, throughout the whole district. There were teams, we get into the weeds, but let me just say that when it comes to some of the things that the teams get, whether it's overnight trips or equipment, things like that, equity has been looked at a serious level, and I'm pretty strong in saying that it's even keel across the board now. Middle school, similar equity pieces. We had, budgets were not the same if they were there. The number of coaches per teams were not the same, so we put in standards for ratios with how many athletes you have per coach. So again, a lot of those things right there, maybe nothing huge that I can say is a major deal, but when you add up all these little things for an equity piece, now school A is looking at school B and saying, yeah, I've wondered why they always got that and we didn't. Or different pots that they paid their workers in. As we look through that through the budget process, we're able to say, we're all doing the same thing now. More work to, but now there's more work to do, but we're looking for those things for equity. Block system. Took a look at this, took 2 years to listen to our coaches, talk to different people around the 5-state area, even talk to people that in the Midwest down to Kansas. Who's running a block system? And what I mean by a block system is we ran 4 different seasons, if you will, for middle school. All at different times, not necessarily correlated with what traditional seasons are or like what high schools were. We took a look at that, listened to the coaches, and we moved away from that. This is our first fall where we are not doing the block system. As one sport, a big change is our softball team was playing in the fall. Now they're playing in the spring. When all of the other teams around are playing in the spring, we have more competition to play with, but also it creates more of that continuity, escalation from middle school to high school. We want that progression. So not only did the block system help with that, we've eliminated some of those barriers that were at middle school to high school. I brought in every head coach to meet with our middle school head coaches and talk about what can we do to enhance our programs? What can we do to provide you with what you need at the middle school level? And in essence, giving the high schools a better product when they get them. So every single sport that we have at the middle school level, we had those meetings. We're giving our coaches resources, practice plans. Over 50% of our middle school football coaches got Tackle One certified this year with USA Football. And when you're with USA Football, here's your practice plan. You know what you're doing. It's not a question of what do I have to do? It's now how am I doing it? And this is what our high school coaches wanted. So continuity, progression. The block system was one of our major changes. Some quotes from the middle school level. And keep in mind, the middle school level was it had just as much of a change as the high school level. But to be honest with you, they're the ones that had some stuff, shouldn't say taken away from them, but it really changed on how they were being serviced. And we're still trying to figure that out middle school is kind of a standalone level over here. And now when the district AD gets involved, I'm still trying to find my way through that and how I can service them better. I think we have a better model right now. And I can say we are on our 3rd model in 2 years on how we handle middle school. We tried the old way with just me handling everything, but with the load at the district level, that wasn't working. So we brought in sport coordinators for every sport that could help me. They did a good job at the middle school level. We had a football coordinator, a volleyball coordinator, but you didn't have any consistency. There was no continuity when you're the AP from South and you're Brian Lowe saying, well, who do I call? I'm calling somebody else all the time. So this year now, or Last year, we started with a district-wide coordinator, one person helping me with all of those sports. And that is working out a lot better. So we're getting some good feedback. Just a couple quotes here from the middle school. This one's made me smile. I did not see much of a difference. Okay, I took that as a win because they had a pretty good model going. A lot of resources available to them, and we were trying to be more efficient, so that was a positive comment. Another one. I don't think that the restructuring has been negative in any way beyond what's out of our control, busing and officials. And they go hand in hand with those problems. As a district as a whole, I think we're putting together some what we'll call consistent deliverables. So what I mean by that is coaches are hearing the same message from Tony, Tyler, myself, and the middle school level, which therefore some consistent deliverables is we're saying the same things to all of the parents, the same things to all of our student athletes. And that's important. If you think about one school, 4 middle schools and 2 high schools, if someone in that 6 is saying things out of line that aren't what the other ones are doing, that's where problems start to happen. So a consistent deliverables are communication. Accountability throughout, I've already mentioned that. I think that moves on to this next one. So it's easy to talk about the things that I think we're doing well. So let's kind of talk about maybe where we still need some help, need some work. So at the high school level, what I'm hearing from our coaches is to continue to do what we're doing. We need to build our programs. And this just isn't in athletics. We need to continue to build our programs in our speech, debate, student congress, we have, I'm not gonna call them serious issues, but we have some issues there with what are we running our middle school programs in speech, debate, and student congress, and how is that relating to our high school? As one coach, 2 coaches here, I'd like to see more help in growing our middle school programs. We run 7 through 12 programs in things like golf, tennis, swim, cross country. We've often forgot about those 7th and 8th graders that are in those activities and in speech, debate, and student congress. We need to promote them just like we're promoting everybody else at the middle school level. So that's something that we're doing as a district-wide, trying to build our programs. I don't think my program's needs have mostly been met, primarily with budgeting being the largest obstacle. So budgeting is one of those things where it was always, I'm understanding it was always a question. So I've already told you we've built budgets. We're gonna be able to go through those annually and find out where did we spend too much, where are we too lean that we need to move some money around. So we're working on that one. Middle school. As I said, we're on our 3rd administrative model. I think we've landed in a good spot. Transportation is getting better. However, what we're used to here pre-COVID was we had Dietrich Bus Company, and at that time, we had a lot of bus drivers. We had bus drivers who, as soon as school was out for middle school at 3:30, they were picking up kids. They were going from Schrader to South. We were playing games by 4 o'clock. Not happening at all anymore. We still don't have bus drivers for those minor routes like that. We still don't have them until at best 4:30. So we are pushing. I mean, we warm up at the home school. So if it's South football, we're warming up at South. And if they're going to Schrader, game starts at 4:45. Get on the bus as soon as you can. How often do we start on time? Not very often. But we usually get going before 5, but we just try and make it a flow instead of making people wait around. That is still a major issue that leads to the scheduling piece. So one way to combat the transportation issue that I talked about is we've tried to recruit some of our coaches or anybody, parents, fans, to just drive our kids after school. Quick route. This year, this fall, we had one Valley coach take us up on that offer, and that one coach has dramatically changed Valley Middle School transportation. We can get across town for a game at 4:15 now if we need to. 3:30 school is out. So what I need when I talk to my coaches at the middle school level, I need to show them this model that they're a Valley Bus Company employee and all the benefits that go along with that, how long you get paid, it's all still there. So we need to do a better job of recruiting some of those because we have a model that works. When we get into officials, part of that problem, we probably, and I'm bringing that up because maybe you've heard a lot about our official problems, lack of officials. Yes, we have a lack of officials out there, but one of our biggest problems is when we don't know how many teams we have. Do we have 14 volleyball teams? Do we have 16? We don't know that till kids sign up. Therefore, then we can't put the schedules out until we know that. By that point, a lot of our NODAC official association, they've already taken other jobs in neighboring towns. Thompson, Larimore, Grafton, all over the place. So tomorrow when I meet with the middle school people, we have a model to go through some standards. All middle schools, how many are you going to guarantee me at the A level? And then at the B level, what are we going to get? The B level can be more variable. One thing that we did with the block system, I want to back up a step, is the A level is something different where it truly is a competitive program. We're playing more out-of-town teams now, and we still play in-town at the A level. But then the B level, the primary focus there is participation. Those kids that want to pick up the sport and try it. So we haven't gotten rid of any of that participation level. We just tried to enhance both a competitive and a participation level. So as a district as a whole, where we need to continue to do work, still some deliverables. In particular, one example is handbooks. We have a student handbook, which covers a lot of the student nuances about how they live their day in the building. We don't necessarily have an athletic handbook at middle school or high school that would answer the questions for our parents and kids as much as we can on all of the activity questions. So we need to do a better job of communicating with them. It sounds simple to just produce the handbooks, but as you get examples of those, and we have some of those, they're very different from district to district. But that's just one example of where we need to do a better job with our district as a whole. So I hope that gives you a better idea as an activities model where we were and where we are now and kind of some of the things that we're doing well and what we still need to work on. But I do want to open it up to questions and hopefully some answers from me.
Questions for Mike Biermeyer? First, Dr. Lund.
Mike, and I think it's just Bill and I probably, but I've watched or participated in athletics for over 50 years, and I know Bill has too, because we're the oldest people here. One of the concerns I have about officials during that 50-plus year span of watching is the fans. And I often talk to people nowadays that are officiating, and they say, well, I'm not doing it anymore. I just can't take it anymore because of the fans. And who are the fans at high school events and middle school events? They're the relatives of the students. Are we doing anything actively to try and promote that good sportsmanship? And it isn't just in the school district. I mean, I see it in summer soccer and all over the place. Are we trying to actively do things to try and help that? First of all, to keep officials wanting to officiate, but secondly, as great examples for their student athletes.
That is a great idea, and my honest answer is I don't think we're right now doing anything different than maybe what we've done in the past, with a slight more emphasis on being able to walk up to those parents and have an easy conversation about what they are saying, giving the green light and the go-ahead to our supervisors to say, especially if you're the administrator, you need to go up there and talk to that person. Try and get there before it escalates too much. Or if you're not an administrator and you're the supervisor, let's give them some tools so they feel comfortable going up there and talking to that person. But the North Dakota High School Association is putting language together. They've done it on holding fans accountable, and 7 through 12 is the North Dakota High School Association. So those will be enforced, meaning officials, don't be afraid if someone is that bad. supervisor, administrator, a person needs to leave. And now we will have accountability for them moving forward.
Other questions? Yeah, Dr. Hodak.
First of all, Mike, thank you for this report. I really appreciate it. So I have a couple of questions as well as comments. And so the comments might be directed for the board as well. In hearing all of this and taking a look at your report of what I have to question. First of all, if I'm understanding how the models have changed, the two models that you said, previous and current, did I hear you say that we no longer have a part-time middle school person, that we have a person that has extended time?
I believe that would be correct. So in the previous model, at the middle school level,
Right.
you're talking,
Yep.
the main person at the middle school, we'll call them, for lack of better terms, the middle school AD,
Right.
part of their teaching day was anywhere between 40 and 60% of their day plus a stipend. That has been reduced to just a stipend.
Okay. So that person, it's not considered even a part-time or a full-time? It's just extended contract?
Extended contract, much like a coach's contract.
Okay. With that information then, what happened with the Valley and Schrader and South? Because I see two principals that are having those duties and not two associate principals having those duties and not another one. And really, I'm coming from the background of training principals, and that was not one of the areas that we focused on, training them to be activities directors or athletic directors. So I have a question about that, if you could respond.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to pipe in here. So I'm not even sure that I'm going to get the entire history of this accurate, but it would be more accurate than Mike's swing at this. So my understanding is back in the day when associate principals were first added to the middle level, their duties as assigned were considered 40% athletic director, and maybe Dr. Brenner can correct me if I'm wrong, 60% AP. And that's how those positions were instated in the first place. As you know, being a former building administrator yourself, the scope of an associate principal's duties has grown exponentially. We've brought in academic accountability, instructional coaching, issues have gotten more complex, yada, yada, yada. And that is why the middle level former AD position at 40 to 60% was instituted to try to lift some of that athletic busyness off of the middle level principals' plates. And now that has shifted over between Mike Biermeier's position with the redoing of the model and then that athletic manager at the middle level, kind of picking up those duties. The reason there's a bit of a discrepancy from Schrader and South to Valley, and that the AP position at Valley isn't directly involved in athletics the way they used to be, is because of that equity piece. Valley, this is not new news to this board, is a school that's on comprehensive school improvement. And with that, the demands and the requirements for the associate principal to be involved in their academic improvement efforts, as well as their MTSSB or behavioral improvement efforts, really was the impetus for us shifting that model. And so the managerial position is at Valley. You saw that there were those four kind of boots on the ground coordinators. Two of them are at Valley to help compensate for that. But that is by design so that that associate principal can directly better influence the CSI work that is occurring there. The job of the middle level associate principal is extremely busy. And our APs at South and at Schrader get pulled during the course of their day at times to help navigate some of the athletics, but Mike continues to be attuned to those dynamics and I think is working hard to try to offload those. And some of the duties that they were required to do before have shifted off their plates, but there still is more of a daytime burden on the APs at South and Schrader than there is at Valley. But again, that's by design from an equity standpoint. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you. I would just caution, I would think that we would want to make sure that job descriptions and the understanding of why it is that way. And as a parent, I would wonder, okay, if my kid goes to South, and the principal or the associate principal is responsible. That's another different duty than that would be of that associate principal at Valley and such. So, yes, that answers that. Kudos on getting rid of the block system for students and for kids. Very excited to see that as well. Also building the programs at that 7th and 8th grade. I, too, come from that background of speech, drama, journalism, music, all of that, and I would say that we really need to build those programs up as well. Now, you were also talking about how some of those issues that you weren't quite certain about how to address. I would urge you, as a former superintendent, as a former principal, those student handbooks are critical. When you talk about parents not understanding their roles at games, their expectations and everything else, I would say that I would say 90% of the schools in North Dakota do have student handbooks for athletes and activities. And it clearly states that first whole page, so that parents clearly understand that I can ask you to leave at a moment's notice, and you can't say, well, this is a public building, and because I've been there and I've done that. And putting that responsibility sometimes on that associate principal, and not having that training and that power and authority. So I would encourage you strongly to work on getting those student handbooks and those athletic handbooks. That, I would say, from my standpoint, is a must.
I appreciate those comments because that's how I feel too. And we do have, the majority of our sports have a sport-specific handbook, and the coach does a very nice job with those. That might handle more of, the curfew issues and what are we wearing on game day travel versus game day home, and all that's great, and how we're handling our senior end-of-year banquet. But there's a lot more that needs to be put into a comprehensive, consistent handbook for one for high school and one for middle school, so we all know what all those extra things are and talked about.
One last comment. I'm hoping that the Grand Forks School District is not resting on their laurels and waiting for the North Dakota High School Activities Association, because of their involvement that they've had in several issues that have occurred in the last couple of years about fans. I would hope that we were proactive in preventing that from happening at our system. Thank you.
Others? Mr. Clevin.
First off, thanks for mentioning the border battle. For those who don't know it, that thing's amazing. Go down and watch sometime, because it really is a kind of this hidden thing in our community that's really taking off. And then lastly, thank you for strongly considering the needs of middle school children. It's been lost over the years, but as we know, it's a very formative time, and appreciate you folks taking effort on that.
Appreciate that.
Others?
This is Amber. I have a question.
Go ahead, Amber.
Could we potentially look into a partnership with UND as part of a collegiate experience for either that middle school management piece for athletics? I'm thinking a possibility of like a resident teacher program, but sort of resident athletic director or resident coach type thing.
I think we certainly can. I think where the relationship right now that we have with UND is they run an officials class that they're trying to gain more traction with that. And then as those students go through the class, then they can become some of our officials. And we've gained some really good contacts with that. The traction isn't quite there that we want. But to speak to the coaches side of it, internships with administrators, that's not we can certainly look into that. Because we do at times run into some problems finding coaches. I mean, all over the place. But I would say especially at the middle school level. Yeah. Thanks, Amber.
Others? Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on, something Dr. Hodek said leads me to an apology. I missed the reading of the school board norms, even though we had talked about it before the meeting, and that would be page 1 of our school board handbook. So would you read the norms before we move on, please?
Yes, first of all, be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table and when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, advocate on behalf of students, and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Move on to 4B. This is our Finance Committee report. Perhaps Mr. Vasicek or Mr. Bombach? Not sure which one of you wants to lead off.
Yeah, I can start with that. We did meet with Jonathan, and he is in the process. This is for the building fund on what money should be set aside for future needs, and he's putting together a tool that we can follow, and the goal is for us is to present it to the board prior to next year's budget, so we have it ready. But there's a lot of changing numbers this summer with safety and security, as well as with the building of Valley and the Career Academy. So once we get farther into it, we'll bring forward an assessment tool that we can follow. And his first shot at it was excellent, so I think he'll have a great tool for us to follow.
Any questions related to the Finance Committee report? Mr. Clevin.
What in general is this tool measuring?
It's gonna, he broke it down into 5 or 6 levels. He took every school and he rated them on plumbing, electrical, and went through the main things he
So
needed to do.
physical condition.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that throws it off a little bit is the number 1 school we have that has the most needs is Valley. And, in hopefully 12 months, it'll be in better condition, brand new, and we'll be just shutting the doors of the old ones, so if the plumbing does go bad, we don't worry about it. So that's what we're kind of waiting on to kind of see as we get forward, but that's what it'll be. I think there was 5 or 6 different assessments he looked at.
And Twining is the other one.
And Twining is the other one, and that is also in the process.
Other questions? Dr. Hodek?
One of the things that I was looking at, I was looking for that assessment tool, the draft that you'd been working on. And since I didn't see it there in that report, then I just kept looking and I did find it. I think Terry had it in one spot. And so my question comes from that. In regarding that tool, I was seeing that after summer projects suggests that you would be doing this once a year only after the summer projects, because I was wondering about where do those goals or that administrative input come from so that they are identifying some of those issues to us as well, or is it at our level with Joel, I think is his name? John, okay.
Yeah, it would be presented to the board once a year.
Okay.
That we would do it, and if needed, if any major changes, then it would be brought back additionally, but finance would meet with him more than that, so.
So the only thing that I would urge you to look at would be that it's assessed twice a year.
Okay.
Once would be at the end of May, so, I mean, as a former principal, I would go, oh, we need this, we need that, and so forth, and then after those summer projects are completed. So what I'm saying is what we saw that needed to be done, is this being put off for another year because these summer projects are identified prior to? So I would urge you to look at that as well.
Yeah, we can take that back, because usually we do facilities group meet, and we can incorporate that with it prior to the work beginning in the summer, once we get closer to that, because then we get the update of which schools might be shut down, which schools will be operating, so we could look at that as well, so.
I have an anecdotal story sometime that if anybody wants me to tell, when I went back to Larimore as a high school principal in 15-16, about how the students really took over the building that needs to be fixed.
Others? Dr. Lund?
I was just wondering if Brandon or Dr. Brenner wanted to comment about that, because I don't think the once a year thing, I don't think that would be for administrative input. I would expect there would be administrative input going to building and grounds much more often than that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. So this is really an assessment tool to take stock of where the deferred maintenance or the condition of that building is, and to keep it updated. You know, prior to this, really the approach is you kind of get a sense if a building really needs some help. You might even bring a third party and they give you a full report. And one vendor is different than the next vendor, and it's a different time period, et cetera. This is more internally a tool that we'll use to regularly monitor. And what hasn't been said yet is it's not just Jonathan at B&G walking around with the clipboard. He brings in a number of different folks, including those head facility managers at each of those buildings, people who really know it, and incorporating other voices. So there's the regular assessment piece. That's really what this is going after. There's definitely an ongoing conversation that brings in a number of different folks of saying, okay, that's our need. Now, how do we prioritize the need? And I think over this past couple of years, we looked at the building fund, talked to our peer school districts, and realized there really weren't great guidance. We talked to the state, and it's not like the 15% goal we have at the general ledger of saying, how much do we need to keep in there? There really weren't guidelines. And again, talk to our peers. Nobody had it. Hey, we just try to keep it positive, not below zero. But what this assessment tool eventuates into a number that says, that's your rainy day fund. And let's stay above that, and that's where we'll prioritize projects from there. So it's a couple different things going on there, but this tool, I think, is our first step internally, having a regular monitoring tool that will certainly involve a lot of different voices.
Other questions? Amber, sorry, I forgot to ask you last time. Do you have anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, 4C, Head Start orientation and student outcome data. Matt Bakke.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I have the opportunity today to present to you some information on Head Start for the 24-25 school year. Director Johnson was not able to be here, so unfortunately you get stuck with me. And so I will do the best I can to answer all of your questions and address them as we go forward. As you're aware of, this is an annual conversation and discussion that happens every year relative to where Head Start is at and the continued commitment to provide this opportunity for our community and within our school district. And so I'll go through some information here on where we're at with the grant as well as where we're going moving forward. And so we're entering the first year of our 5-year grant. We have a non-federal share where they're doing, not only engaging the students, but engaging the families in the work that's being done on a daily basis. So I would ditto those comments, Dr. Lund.
Others? Dr. Hodak.
Yes, I was blessed to get this position on Head Start. I actually had a doctoral student that was nationally recognized for her dissertation on the support of Head Start and what we should be doing as a nation with these kids and at the ages they are coming to us, especially with the problems, that social, emotional, and those skill sets that they're coming with. I had the opportunity to meet with Tracy this morning for the first time, and I was so impressed. She answered every question. In fact, I would find it difficult to have me on the other side because of my background, but I was also impressed with her staff that before I got into her office that could answer questions, especially because one member didn't know I was on the board yet. And so when she was telling me about the issues, especially with transportation, when Tracy started to explain to me about the income level, with a family of 4, I mean, it's unbelievable. But that said, Tracy and I talked about these numbers, and I was so impressed. And I have heard nothing but good throughout many, many years about this Head Start program. So I really hope that we can do legislatively pushing for it, not just at the state, but at the national level as well, and to continue to do what we can. She did say she was short one teacher this year. We talked about the ratio of basically she has 14 to 1 with students, and that she has, with that teacher, she has an assistant, I believe, and then a para. So those are some phenomenal numbers, but at the same time, and Erica, I appreciate your comment, those students that are coming in, and for whatever reason, we really have to work with them because those numbers show then they get better and are ready for that kindergarten. So thank you.
Others? Amber, do you have anything?
I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Move on to agenda item 5A. This is our consent agenda. I would seek a motion to approve the items in the consent agenda. It's been moved by Dr. Lund, and second by Mr. Palmasino. We'll take a roll call vote.
Hodak,
Yes.
Larson is absent. Manley,
Yes.
Clevin,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Palmasino,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Item 5B, general fund financial statement. Mr. Brandon Bombach.
Yeah, President Berger, members of the board, I'm just have in front of you the monthly statement. Just on the memo, it kind of articulates high level. This is for the first 3 months of the year, July 1 through September 30th, even though we're near the end of October. This is through September 30th. We have the general fund revenues exceeding 16 million and the expenditures just a little bit more than that at 16.8 million, putting the expenditures over revenues of 458,000 at this point in the year. The report lays out firstly the budget versus actual. The first few pages here, you can maybe just a couple of highlights on this report. You see revenues from other sources summarized in the first page of that report. That's a little bit higher than where it was last year, and that's because we've already sold the CTE home, that not the one that's currently being constructed, but we kind of had a backlog where we had 2 of those in our arsenal to be sold. One was last fiscal year, and we've already closed on the sale of the second one in this fiscal year. But that puts your revenues at about 12.6% of the planned budget and total expenditures of 13%. What'll happen next in November is the state will make its adjustment for any enrollment correction. So right now we're still being paid off of last year's or the spring enrollment. And then now come November is where they will lock in the fall enrollment numbers, and that'll pay throughout the rest of the year. So we'll see that one change. In the federal sources, just kind of noting that you'll see that ESSER number or CARES Act number is down. The program is still in function through 9/30, so we had the last tens of thousands of dollars to expend, but functionally we're done with ESSER dollars at this point. If you move to the second report, This is the comparison report. It can be helpful in understanding where we're at this point in the year because it compares where we were at this point last year. And so the first column is through September 30 of this year, and the second column of being the same point in time last year. You can see we're up 9.2% in revenues, and we're a little bit lower in expenditures of 2.7%. This could still be timing based on when some of those bills come in and expenditures come in. But on that first page, you can see I make several comments, and those numbers on the left side of that table correspond later in the report. So just to point a couple of those out, one thing that I'm just pointing to for early indications in that salary section, you see that professional actual dollars spent through September 30th. At this point, compared to last year, it's pretty much the same. And that's facing the reality of a more than 5% increase for those certified individuals. And so that's largely some work of that realignment conversation of making sure that those dollars are budgeted for and not exceeding. So that's interesting to see through that first payroll, and we'll continue to watch that as time goes on. Another one worth noting under other expenses is that the printing appears to really have gone up. That's a change for how we're accounting for some things. It's more cost effective to print in the print shop at the back of the building here, just due to the size of printers we have and the cost of ink and paper, versus if you print at the printer at the building. And when you print at the printer of the building, those get caught up in a different line, service agreements, because we release those printers. And we've been making a concerted push to a more efficient printing model, printing out of the print shop, and so it's showing up in this line here this year. It's not that we're printing that much more, but it's really just changing for how we do it. And then the last comment under utilities, we're already seeing lower electricity. Of course, there's seasonality. It was an awfully nice day today. We're also hopeful to see that number stays low because of the investments we've made into energy savings, energy efficiency. Just the last 3 pages give a graphical representation of where we're at through 9/30. You can see that revenues are just a little bit ahead each of the past 2 years. Expenditures are down when compared to the past couple of years. And ultimately, that's showing a stronger balance at this point in September. Again, there can be some timing things there that'll work itself out here, but ultimately a positive report for early indications on the budget. And just to reiterate the memo, the request here is this is an item for action, is that would be the administrative recommendation to approve the general fund financial statement for the period of July 1, 2024 through September 30th, 2024. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Amber, do you have a question?
I do not, thank you.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the general fund financial statement for the period of July 1 through September 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Clevin. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Manley. Any further discussion? Take a roll call vote.
Palmesino,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes,
Larson is absent, Manley,
Yes.
Clevin,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. We're on to item 5D. 5C, consideration of B legendary academic goals. And I believe we'll hear first from Marcia McMahon. Welcome.
Turned it on right. It's always a pleasure to be back in Grand Forks, especially when there's not any snow around. I'm not usually that lucky. But for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Marcia McMahon. I'm one of the B Legendary coaches. Grand Forks has started this journey quite some time ago. I want to let you know that we are moving in the process forward. A lot of things at the beginning of the process are not necessarily as much as what the board does, but what the administration is doing and looking at getting information and getting things together to present to the board. Just a real quick overview, because I know that we have some new board members, and it's been a while. When we did our training, we talked about inputs, outputs, and outcomes. Inputs being resources like teachers, transportation, staff, curriculum, budget, those belong under the realm of the superintendent that he guides the board. Outputs are measurement tools that we use to determine are the resources providing the outputs that we need, but the outcomes at the end belong to the board. So tonight, we're going to be talking about outcomes, and we're going to be talking specifically about student outcomes, what students know and are able to do. So what we've been working on over the last several months is looking at student data. When we met, we identified 3 areas that the board wanted to focus on. One was on reading, one was on math, and one was on Native American graduation. Those were the 3 priorities that the board set. It doesn't mean that nothing else is important. Everything is important, but these are the 3 critical areas that this board saw that they wanted to start this district on this journey over the next 5 years. So over the last few months, we have been working with the administration, looking at those 3 suggestions and creating student outcome goals. You have 3 student outcome goals that I'm going to ask Dr. Brenner to present to you tonight for some action and approval.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you again for being here today. I'm just going to work off the first page of the memo that you have in front of you, and we'll start with the literacy goal. Grand Forks Public Schools will increase English language arts proficiency levels from 48% proficient or advanced in the 2022-23 school year to 56% proficient or advanced by September of 2028, as measured by the North Dakota Academic Progression of Learning Distribution of Improvement from 23 to 2028 for all learners. We're going to hold off on the progress monitoring piece tonight, so I'm just going to go over the goals. So that would be the literacy goal, and then you can see on the subsequent pages, the goals are broken out into K1, grade 2 specific, grade 3 specific, 4, 5, and grades 6 through 8, and 10. That doesn't mean we're not paying attention to 9th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, because when they're in their professional learning communities and their MTSS work on those early outs, this is exactly what they're looking at and feeding into the overall district goals, school board goals. The second goal, the academic goal, would be the math goal, and that is stated as Grand Forks Public Schools will increase mathematics proficiency levels from 41% or advanced in 2022-23 to 49% proficient or advanced by September of 2028, as again measured by the North Dakota Academic Progression of Learning and Distribution of Improvement from 2023 to 2028. And that goal also is broken out by grade levels, starting in grades 2 and 3, grades 4 and 5, 6, 7, and grade 8, and then of course we move into high school as well. So our campuses are laser-like focused on looking at their academic goals in both literacy and math, feeding into the district level goals that the board is ultimately responsible for in terms of outcomes, as well as the superintendent. And then when Chief Academic Officer Amy Barch was here at one of our last meetings, she talked about the Native American graduation rate goal had already been met. So we've increased that metric, but Marcia, if you want to help me out here a little bit, you'd like to hold on that goal in the moment.
Yes. If you guys will remember, and those of you that have been working with writing goals, 5-year goals, if you look at goal 1 and goal 2, it just shows 23-24 data and then stops. Well, there's a reason for that, because this year we're having a new state assessment. And so it would be comparing apples and oranges. So while the goal still is a 5-year goal, we are going to have to reassess and readjust our goal based upon the data that comes in at the end of the year. So those 2 stop right there. So those 2 goals are ready to be approved, so we can move on. The goal progress measures, we're going to bring those back to you. If you look at the information in your board book, you see last year, and then you see the first, I believe it's the first assessment that was given. That's why some numbers went up and some numbers went down. We're going to redo that to focus on where do we project to be at the end of the year. We want to look at annual targets. We will still report to the board those interim growths throughout the year, but we're going to switch it more to the annual targets, and that belongs to the superintendent. The third goal is Native American, and it is graduation rate that we can project out to 2028. So we're going to ask that, if your pleasure, approve goal 1 and 2 as it is, knowing we're going to have to readjust, and let us just table goal 3 till we can bring it back and give you those annual targets all the way out through 2028.
So with that, unless there are any questions for Marcia or me, the administrative recommendation is to approve just goals 1 and 2, the literacy and math goal for tonight.
Are there any questions? Dr. Lund?
I hate to do this, but I have a question about goal 3. So my question is do you worry that because the numbers are smaller, that 1 or 2 more Native American students graduating or not graduating can change that percentage significantly? Does that bother you compared to other data which has much bigger nominators and denominators?
That can be, Marcia's deferring to me, so that can be the case because it is a fairly small subgroup. So I think if we look out to 2028, but still keep some of the metrics in yearly, that's a fair question.
Thank you.
Other questions? Amber?
No.
Dave, if I may,
Yep, Mr. Clevin?
how are the numerical values for those goals determined?
When we met with Marcia and Lori Elliott, we had to look at how far down do we press on the accelerator. We wanted to make sure that the goals were attainable and not aspirational, and we wouldn't achieve those. So we looked at incremental percents each year to get to that final number in 2028. We had good coaching and good pushing back from Marcia and Lori on whether we were aggressive or enough on those goals.
When you're looking at, there are a couple of things that you want to look at when you're writing your goals and your targets, your deadline targets. You want it to challenge the organization. You want to make it so it brings forth adult behavior change. Because if you keep doing things the same way you've always done, you're going to continue to get what you always got. But you also want them to be attainable. So it's really hard to find that sweet spot that holds all 3 of those together in challenging and making those adult behavior changes is what's really going to start to move the needle for Grand Forks. And we're talking adult behavior change from the board all the way down. If you all don't remember, our mantra is student outcomes do not change until adult behaviors change. And that's what this whole focus of this Be Legendary governance is about. And yes, it took us quite some time to come to an agreement to bring before the board.
Other questions? Dr. Lund?
Just a comment, since Jay wasn't around. It was hours of discussion about it. It wasn't a 3-minute, okay, well, here's the goals and here's the annual thing. There was a lot of discussion and thought that went into it.
Others? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve Goal 1 and Goal 2.
So move.
It's been moved by Dr. Hodak. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Lund. Any further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote.
Larson is absent. Palmesino.
Yes.
Clevin.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Hodak.
Yes.
Flynn.
Yes.
Berger.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Thank you. Do you have something, Dr. Brenner?
We're going to continue. The second part of tonight's presentation is for Ms. McMahon to lead the board through this notion of what are superintendent guardrails to make sure we can accomplish this work? What are the responsibilities that I have supervising people directly and then people who I don't supervise directly, and that would be what happens at the classroom level. So, Ms. McMahon.
Guardrails are very interesting in this work of governance. You have guardrails on some of your roads here in North Dakota, right? What's the purpose of a guardrail? Stay on the road, stay on your route, stay where you're supposed to be. Because if you don't, what happens? You go. If you're like me driving in North Dakota, you go into a ditch, and that's not what we want. So when we talk about superintendent guardrails, now that you have goals on reading and math, what are some of the things that we as a school system do not want to see happen that keeps us within these boundaries? It seems kind of strange to word them in superintendent shall not verbiage. But, you know, guys, guardrails have been around for a long time. We call them the 10 Commandments, and we call them the Bill of Rights. You know, thou shalt not. And so when we look at guardrails, we're looking at the things that we want to make sure will not disrupt the progress of these goals. So if you think for a minute and you look at Goal 3 reading, Goal 3 math, Native American, what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles that this school system might have in trying to achieve a goal in reading?
Resource allocation.
Resource allocations. Instructional information. If kids don't come to school, can they learn? You know, attendance. And Dr. Lyon, I was thinking of you earlier today trying to get this concept of a guardrail, you know, across. When you have a patient come into your office, one of your nurses that check them in, one of the first things they ask them is, do you have any known allergies, right? So your patient comes to you, you already have a guardrail in front of you. I know that I cannot give them anything with penicillin if that's their allergy. So when we're looking at guardrails from this standpoint, we're looking at things that you know, cannot go without a system of instruction, a high-level system of instruction, cannot go without making, what's the word I'm looking for, the attendance rate, the what? That's it. I knew it started with a C. Thank you. The chronic absentee rate cannot fall below this. And so the board will be working on in the next month, the staff will be bringing to you some ideas of some guardrails for you to look at. And then the superintendent will also, just like goal progress measures, he will be doing guardrail progress measures. And those are written in SMART form. The superintendents, the board guardrails are just written as statements. The superintendent shall not allow the system to go without an instructional program to improve student outcomes, which could be PLCs, could be lesson plans, could be superintendent cannot allow the school system to exist without student outcome-focused instruction. And then he will make the progress measures for that. That's your next step that we're going to be working on. After that, we get to write guardrails for the board itself as to things that you will not do in the process of governance to enhance student outcomes for your children. Does that kind of give you an idea of, because it's been a long time, it's been a while. Oh, that Texan just came out there, didn't it? It's been a while, so if you have any questions, I know we have some new board members on here. We're working on trying to get you into a training and get you some background. Just real quick, I'll let you know the biggest concept is school systems exist for one reason, and that's to improve student outcomes. And therefore, that should be the priority and the majority of your meetings. Any questions?
Mr. Palmesino?
Maybe it's just a question to you, how you've done it in other areas. How do we account for students if we see a huge increase in students on IEPs? And that's going to affect our bottom number. How do we adjust the numbers if we see a huge increase on poverty in Grand Forks? How does that overall number? Because if you look at the percentages, those kids rank, so if you put a guardrail on today's numbers of those students and we see a big change down the road of poverty, or we see a big change of IEPs, how do you make those adjustments?
That's a good question. The numbers piece of a guardrail would come in the superintendent guardrail progress measures. And some of those progress measures might be just a 1 or 2 year. Like, teachers will utilize standard-based instruction. Or if you're looking at the gap between all students and economically disadvantaged cannot increase, or the gap between cannot increase. As those numbers increase, he can change those mediums as they go, using smaller years to get them done. Does that make sense? Yeah. The goal you don't change. The only time you change a goal is when you either meet it or the deadline comes and you have to revisit it. But I do want to reemphasize one of the things that had to be redone that Dr. Brenner said in terms of your Native American graduation rate. Because not only did you exceed where you were last year, you exceeded it a tremendous amount. And that's something that we can look at as well. Any other questions?
I have a question. This is Amber.
Hi, Amber.
What happens if we meet a goal and then we drop below that goal in the next year?
Are you talking like from 25, you meet your annual target, and then from 26, or are you talking about the 5 years?
So let's say for a Native American graduation rate, for example, what if that number goes down past the measurement that we met this year?
Okay, so like you're saying in Catherine, 2024 it was 72, is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, let's say it was in 2024 it was 72. You should have an annual target of 2025 being 75%, but it turns out the number drops to 69. What do? You ask the superintendent, how are you going to make up that shortage from this year to the next year? What are you going to do in changing your strategies? How are you going to move forward? Because the deadline target doesn't change. Annual targets, if you meet it, great. If you don't change your annual targets just because you didn't meet it. The conversation gets, what are we going to do differently to fill that gap? Did that answer your question, Amber?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any others?
And I'm also glad to see your student representative here, because that's why we're here.
That's right.
Okay.
One more, Dr. Lund?
Just a comment, not a question. You talk about the new board members. I think the old board members could probably use some re-education or continuing education or things like that as well. I'll pass that on to our board leadership.
I think we could do that. I think we could schedule a refresher for everybody. Most likely in January.
Yes.
When it's snowing, late January. Or you could always come to Texas for a retreat.
Other questions?
Maybe just a closing comment. I want to thank Marcia for being here.
It's always a pleasure.
She's been on the road a lot. She was in Bismarck a lot last week, stayed through the weekend, drove from Bismarck here to Grand Forks to meet with us tonight, flying out tomorrow. So thank you very much.
And I learned, don't trust your GPS to get you where you need to be, because I was in places I had no idea I told somebody, I said, if I don't arrive in Bismarck, hit the back roads and come find me. I'm around here somewhere. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It was nice
Were
to see
there
you.
guardrails?
Some, yes. Others, no. But at least there was no snow.
Thank you. Move on to item 5D, 2024-2025 blackout date removal. Ms. Catherine Glatch.
Thank you, Board Chair Berger. You can see in the memo that we are just requesting the removal of one blackout date that was previously approved by the board according to School Board Policy ABAB. Just a reminder that our blackout dates are intended to allow teachers work time for things like grading, open house preparation, things of that nature. And so therefore the blackout date means that they can't have a meeting scheduled in the building on that date. We recognize after reviewing the final calendar and going through that with a fine-tooth comb that there was a misnomer and we accidentally had a blackout date after the report card due date. And so our tri-chairship decided to make an executive decision and bring it forward for approval tonight. So the administrative recommendation is to approve removing the February 27th, 2025 blackout date from this year's school calendar.
Any questions? Amber?
No.
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to remove the February 27th, 2025 blackout date from this year's school calendar. Moved by Mr. Palmasino. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Anderson. Any further discussion? Take a roll call vote.
Clevin,
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Larson is absent, Lund,
Yes.
Palmasino,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Move on to 6A, announcements. Are there any announcements? Yeah. Dr. Brenner?
Just one quick one. Red River High School football team finished their season undefeated, and they will host the first round of the playoffs Friday night against Bismarck St. Mary's. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Six B, board requests for future consideration. Any board members have anything they wish to offer up for future consideration? Amber?
No, thank you.
Item 6C, school board meeting norms. Dr. Hodak, how did we do?
I think we did well.
Thank you. And we are adjourned. Just a reminder, we'll take just a couple, 3 minutes to reset, and then we'll begin our Facilities Committee meeting of the whole. So let's say roughly 7:31. Give us enough time to get things turned around. Thank you.